afternoon, guys. Today, I will be presenting Mr. Rashid Seedat. He is the head of the Gauteng Planning Commission, as a position he assumed in October 2011. The JPC is located in the Office of the Premier. He's responsible for short, medium, and long-range planning, as well as performance monitoring and evaluation for the Gauteng provincial government. Rashid was director of the Central Strategy Unit in the city of Johannesburg for over 10 years, where he was responsible for strategic planning, including formulation of the growth and development strategy and the integrated development plan, strategic policy development, and performance management. He previously worked as a senior specialist in local government as Plan Act. That's how you say it? Okay. At Plan Act, a progressive non-governmental organization. He was also active in organizations affiliated to the United Democratic Front between 1980 and 1994 during the struggle against apartheid. Rashid has a BA, Masters in Public and Development Management, and MSc in Development Planning, all from Wits University in Johannesburg. He was awarded a fellowship at the Local Government Centre, Warwick University, UK between 1992 and 93, and also studied at the University of London in the UK in 1993. Warm round of applause.
Very quickly get a sense of who you are and what's your kind of background. 20 seconds, even less. So I know who I'm talking to. I know there are like two planners who I know from before, so I know they play. So they, but I mean I don't, and I know this is a very diverse group. So I want to know who the rest of you are and what's your background. So kind of talk in that kind of way. So let's start with you.
A simple background in development planning at Wits University and from Joburg. Yeah.
Shugapta Pasta. I'm a social planner by training from UT.
My name is Holega. I studied political science at the University of Pretoria, and I'm from Soweto.
I'm Weka Ahmad. I'm from Soweto, studying in UT, doing Islamic studies.
I'm Yasmin. Studied law and BA. Become human resource management.
I am Polisi. I come from a legal background and international relations. I'm from Victoria.
I'm Malachi. I'm from Victoria. I'm a BTech in management from the University of Technology. Also running a small NGO in Victoria.
But like where in Pretoria?
Boisent.
Where?
Pretoria Boisent.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hello, my name is Mafule Muswani. I'm originally from Limpopo, somewhere in a rural area called Ramasemu, and I'm currently staying in Benoni, Whitehead, and I'm a geographer and environmental scientist, doing my master's efforts.
Yeah, either one.
Hi, my name is Tonga. I'm from Durban. I studied international relations and German, and I'm passionate about youth development and women empowerment. So, women economic empowerment.
Okay.
I'm Natalie. I've got a background in marketing and I'm from Pretoria.
Okay.
Moetu Osana. I'm a creative. I've got a background in political science and psychology.
My name is Monaka Potchenzo. I'm from Uganda and I have a background in international relations, politics, developmental studies, social development, project management.
Hi, my name is Rumi. I'm from Joburg. I'm actually a therapist and a business woman.
Good.
Hi, my name is Sophia Bro. I finished my degree in BA psychology and anthropology. I'm from
Good.
Hi, my name is Sabina. I was born in Johannesburg, grew up in Europe for the all my life, and I have a degree in
Law.
Hi, I'm Tori. I kind of mislimited enough digitalization and Africa in general.
Hi, my name is Gokhan here. I'm completing my master's in environmental law.
That's it.
I was waiting for you to Hi, I'm Disvanelo. I'm originally from Bogolete in Cape Town. I did my undergrad at UWC, did my honours at UCT. I'm doing my master's at Wits in inclusive education, focusing on gender-based violence and heteropatriarchy, hopefully dismantling it.
I'm Shazia. I'm from Johannesburg. I studied a PPE degree at Selma.
And I'm Zima Shabangu from Bogolete in Cape Town as well. And my background, I will become in business management.
I'm Mohammed Mayo from Cape Town, Kailisha, and my background is in Medina Institute Islamic Studies.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Fukulan. I have background in law, philosophy, and economics, and I'm currently doing my master's in methodology.
Methodology.
Yeah, it's like social
I would
science.
want to do a master's in methodology.
I enjoy
No, I'm
it.
joking.
I'm Sophia Umar. I'm from Johannesburg and I did my honors in business science, human resource management.
Okay.
I'm Safia as well. I'm from
Well,
Durban.
definitely.
Well, I'm from Ladysmith. I studied in Durban and I have background in political science and media.
Hi, I'm Rodney. From Eastern Cape. Background in financial management, economics, particularly finance.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello. Hello, sir.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Mariam. I'm from Lesotho. My background from aesthetic law, education, Arabic management.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. That gives me a very good sense. So I kind of keep it sort of general because we have a great diversity of stuff. So I'm not going to talk about densification. I'm joking, but I mean, so stay away from the jargon, but give you some sense of what we in the Gauteng provincial government are basically thinking about. When I discussed this with Surveya yesterday, I had two possible presentations. One was like just a general view about where Gauteng province is going on a sort of a broad basis. So, covering the Premier's overall strategy about where he wants to take the province over the next 15 years into the year 2030. And the other one is this one, which is actually slightly more technical presentation, looking at the spatial framework. So, and people don't always understand what spatial frameworks are, and I'll basically, I think, hopefully, when I finish in about 45 minutes time, you should have some idea about that. If if you're not really familiar with that kind of terminology. So, so in a way, I'm not assuming too much, if you see what I'm saying, because we have very diverse backgrounds and you know the problem, right? Once we kind of in our silos, we tend not to sort of understand what's going on in other silos. So we all studied like that, unfortunately. So, but hopefully this is some opportunity to kind of go forward. Oops, let me see. Right. Okay. So maybe just to explain, I'm going to talk about the Gauteng Spatial Development Perspective 2030 or GSDP 2030. It's really the GSDP 2030 is a discussion document that we're going to subject to additional stakeholder engagement and eventually will be approved as the statutory Gauteng Spatial Development Framework. So there's a law called the SPLUMA Spatial Planning Land Use Management Act, which was passed about 2 years ago. It took effect last year. And now, so we have a perspective which is really what we kind of taking out to public consultation, and after that we will then formally approve it as such. But what are we trying to say? And in a way, I thought, let me just restrict it to these two things. The one is the idea of the Gauteng City region. And I'm going to, that idea doesn't exist in any legislation, but if you listen to Premier Makura talking about this issue, you'll hear him talking about the Gauteng city region over and over again, not the Gauteng province, or not the Gauteng provincial government. Those are legal entities, but he talks about the Gauteng city region. So what is this animal called the Gauteng city region? And since a lot of you are now based, live here, or from here, or based here, or studying here, I think it's really kind of relevant to understand what that concept is all about. And also, at a very high level, it's the overarching framework to guide land use. So how do we use land in this place called Gauteng? How do we plan for transport, and how do we ensure that infrastructure is put into the ground in relation to each of these things? So that's really what we want to do. Now, just to say a couple of things, right? So, in terms of the overall policy alignment, so where are we? Where is this thing called the Gauteng Special Development Framework located? It's located definitely within the national context, within the National Development Plan and its 14 outcomes that have been defined. These are the sort of the pillars, if you like, or the principles, the fundamental underlying ideas that the National Development Plan wants to achieve. Okay, and that's spatial justice. So we're talking in relation to the spatial framework, not in relation to the entire National Development Plan. But there's a very kind of close relationship between the NDP and the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act that I spoke about. And so these are the ideas: spatial justice, sustainability, resilience, spatial quality, and efficiency. We won't go into that. But related to that, at the provincial level, Premier Makura basically defined what is called the 10-pillar program of TMR, transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization. So basically, when he came to office, he said, I want to do three fundamental things. I want to ensure transformation in a whole number of areas. I want to show modernization. Modernization is a different concept. It means you're kind of bringing up to date things that that were still kind of languishing in the past. How do we kind of come up to a point where we really equivalent to what's going on in the best in the world? And then reindustrialization. That's a very particular idea around saying how do we had a very strong industrial base in this country, and especially in this province historically. I mean, maybe just to go, I'm sure you've done this, I saw some of your things, but just to go back, what we had in South Africa for a long time, obviously, was, you had, I'm talking about now during colonial and apartheid times, we had essentially an agricultural economy until the discovery of diamond and gold in the 19th century. And that transformed the nature of the South African economy very, very dramatically. Gold was the mainstay of this economy for over 100 years. In fact, for about 100 years, we were the largest producers of gold in the world. But now we're down to about 6 or 7 in the last 10 years. Basically, the gold is running out. But that was, so mining or minerals extraction, a big part of what was happening. But in fact, there was a period of rapid industrialization that happened in the post-war period and up to the 1960s. So, in other words, we started making everything from cars to like consumer products to fabricating steel, all sorts of things. But what we found, particularly during the post-apartheid period, we found this process of deindustrialization, and there are many very complex factors. People often point to this idea of liberalization of the economy, meaning you open up the economy, you compete with China, and you get screwed. So that's what happened. I'm not saying that I disagree with liberalization, because sometimes if you keep too close in the economy, basically you also get into trouble. But let's not go there. That's not the issue. The issue here is about this area about reindustrialization. So how do we recreate an industrial base for Gauteng? And all of that is then related to some of our key frameworks, which I'm not going to go into any detail. Let me skip this one, or those two, but let me go into giving you some sense of what we're talking about. So maybe just one or two things in terms of the population. In Gauteng, we've seen quite a dramatic increase in population. So And this doesn't show you, for example, it shows you figures from 2001 to 2011, which is the date of the last census. But you can see the population in Gauteng in that period, that 10-year period, grew by 30%. In 1994, we were in the order of about 6 to 7 million people in Gauteng. In fact, and you can see that in that period, we've actually doubled the population. So that's actually, you're adding 5 to 6 million more people in the space of less than one generation. It's a hell of a lot of people. So basically you're adding almost 3/4 of a London into this province. So that's quite important. And you see Joburg, COJ, now this is typical kind of government speak, but COJ means City of Johannesburg Metropolitan Municipality. So that's Joburg. Joburg, you can see in that period increased from 3.2 million to 4.4 million people, a 37% increase. City of Tshwane, which is basically Pretoria, the Greater Pretoria area, you can see what was in the order of 2 million is now in the order of 3 million. And Ekurhuleni is basically about 2.4, was 2.4, is now 3.1. And that's basically the old East Rand, from Kempton Park, OR Tambo International Airport, Katoris townships and so on, all the way to Springs. So, and then basically you got Sedibeng, which is the Vaal area, including places like Vereniging van der Park, and the Westland, all the mining towns, the Western area and so on. But I'll show you some maps just now. So, oops, what happened there? Ooh. What's happened to my maps? Here's a map. Some of my maps disappeared somehow. I don't know how. Eesh. Okay. Huh?
The similar thing happened yesterday. I think
is
it's just too big for the.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Is it not there as well? No. Okay, I don't know.
It's okay, don't worry, it's fine. Okay, where's the slideshow? Okay, it's fine. Okay, maybe, I mean, you can't see this, but what we expect to happen over the next 15 years is that we expect the population to grow from to between 15 and 18 million people. So right now we're in the order of 13 million people in Gauteng. So we'll grow by another 2 to 5 million people over this period. And again, I mean, that's actually quite a significant increase in the population. But let me actually, I'm going to go to, all my maps are gone, all the interesting ones are gone. Okay, oops. Yeah, you see, this is going to be a bit of a problem. Okay, you know what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to, let me just see which other maps I got here. Okay, what I'm going to do is to give you, I'm going to just talk to this map, but I'm going to talk to the map to give you a sense of orientation, but I'm going to talk to a number of issues. Okay. So this is Gauteng. Okay. And can anyone give me an idea about what do you think of the size, the percentage size of Gauteng is in relation to the rest of the country? Say the Northern Cape might be like 18% or something. What do you think Gauteng is?
5%.
Sorry? What?
5.
5. You're all going for 5.
Huh?
Huh?
Population or land mass?
No, land, the land area, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What? Yeah, you're the closest. It's 1.5%. It's actually 1.4% of the land area. That's how small it is in land. So if you zoom out, you just see Gauteng, but you look at the Northern Cape. It's the largest province, but the population of the entire Northern Cape, which is the largest province, will fit maybe into a quarter of Soweto. You see what I'm saying? So that's the kind of difference that you have. So that's the first point about Gauteng. The second point about Gauteng is, again, in population terms, what's the proportion roughly to the rest of the country? Any idea? Percentage? 40. No, 40 is too much. Okay, but basically it's about a quarter of the population. Just actually about under a quarter of the population. So we have in the order in this country of about 52 million people. Gauteng is just heading towards 13 million.
Just on that, right? Because we're talking about Gauteng as a whole having close to 10 million people, right? Are these people which were actually counted during the census, or was it an estimate, approximate estimate, or there could be even more, maybe let's say an additional 2 million from that?
Okay, it's basically okay. We're talking about at the moment with the current mid-year estimates. We're about 13 out of 52 million, which is about 25%. Does somebody want to try and answer to that question? It's a good question.
Well, I think we have to be estimates because, like, province, the province such as Gauteng would experience like weekly or even daily like migrants and stuff due to it being like the economic hub. So I would say probably, the 13 million figure is slightly lower than what it should be.
Okay. Is that your...
I think there's also foreigners who aren't accounted for, perhaps people who are in papers, people who are homeless. I don't think the census particularly went to those people. So I think it's a rough estimate, but there could possibly be so much more.
Okay.
Actually, I think because not only with the people that, first, the census is only every 5 years.
I can't hear you. Sorry, just say it again.
I'm saying, I think the census is not done every year. It's done
every 10 years, yeah.
10 years or so.
But I'll explain about that, yeah.
So now, the last time we did it is probably about 6 years back.
2011.
2011, so it's 5 years back. And I'm not sure if that calculation is according to that stat. But if it's according to that stat, then it's definitely not accurate because there is definitely a lot of people coming through every month with profits.
Okay, let me tell you the story quickly. I don't want to get kind of stuck on demographics, but it's a very important point about understanding what we're dealing with. What happened during the apartheid period was that firstly we know that you had apartheid fragmentations. You had Bantustans. So you had two types of Bantustans. You had the TBVC states, the nominally independent Transkei, Bantustans, Venda, and Ciskei. Then you had the rest of them, and then you had the rest of the country. Okay, which was basically apartheid colonialism. Is it mine? Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically the story is that under that system it was a very serious problem. Just before the '94 election, the apartheid government wanted to have a census, and the ANC, remember, was the main kind of opposition party, and basically objected because what they wanted to do was simply take aerial photographs, count the number of units, kind of multiply by an average, and basically create the number. Right? And of course, because you had so much fragmentation with all the different Bantustans and all of that, you had very inaccurate figures. So the first post-apartheid census took place in 1996. It was the first time when we got relatively credible numbers. And it's quite an important point. So in other words, before that, all the numbers were not credible because they were tainted by apartheid and all of that kind of stuff. But and there are three factors that underpin demography of any sort. One is migration. No, well, one is fertility. So how many children does every woman give birth to, and so on. The other is mortality. So is the rate at which people are dying, and we know during the AIDS pandemic, the life expectancy actually dropped to around 55. It's now since antiretrovirals have been introduced, they're now in the order of 63, 64 years of age. And the other one is migration that people are pointing to, people coming into the urban system. So anyway, to cut a long story short, all of those things are generally taken into account in the census. And there is an adjustment for undercount. And there's the Statistical Council which looks at which is an independent body outside of Stats SA. They look at and it's made up of demographers and experts, and they look at what is the potential undercount. Every country has an undercount, even the most advanced economies, without a doubt, because you always have migrants who are hiding away and don't want to be counted. So you have to take that into account. So the point I'm making, and also when we talk about 13 million today, what they do is they do post-census surveys. So they find ways of adjusting the figures year in, year out. And then, the next census will be in 2021 or whatever it is. But there are many major surveys that happen in between. But I think it's a very important kind of point, because if we want to understand any of the disciplines that people who are here, whether you're in education or in media or in law or whatever, demography is very fundamental to understand who your population is, how it's composed, how it's segmented in different ways. What are the kind of the gender splits, the racial splits. All of those things are really important to understanding South African society, as it is, and certainly impacts on this overall story. But can we also? I would also appeal to you, not because I have any agenda, but I think that in broad terms, we accept, most people accept that the census is broadly correct. So that if we say that the population is 13 million, it's easy to say, it's easy to have a population like 20 million or whatever. It's unproven. So I think the whole point about having a kind of a reasonable, credible view is quite important. Okay. Okay, I'm running out of time. Okay, so that's that's another part of the story. The other part of the story is the economy of Gauteng. So, what do you think the percentage of Gauteng's contribution to the national economy is? Remember, we've got 1.5% of the land area. We have a quarter of the population. What do you think we contribute in economic terms? So no, it's not as high as that, but it's basically 35. It's 35-36% at the moment. So you can see that normally your share of value add in the economy is usually around the amount of your population. But what you have is what's called agglomeration, because we have so much activity, economic activity, kind of co-located. You have this idea called agglomeration. Economists call it agglomeration. So basically, the linkages between firms and markets and so on are basically allow for a great level of economic activity. But in the Gauteng context, there's yet another story. And that story is basically the fact that you have, differentiation. Okay, you have differentiation in the space economy. So where you see all the colored things, that's where in this case, and this is the right map. These are the darker places are where you have a high concentration of employment opportunities, and you can see it's obvious. It's around Johannesburg, Sandton, the CBD of Johannesburg, the center of Tshwane, Pretoria, and Ekurhuleni on the east end around Old Town International Airport. And as you radiate outwards, you can see the colors get lighter and the amount of employment opportunities basically decline. So what you have, so even though you've got, say, if we say this has got like about 36% of GDP, if you actually take this will probably be in the order of 28 to 30% being generated here and the rest on the periphery. So I mean, I think that's one important thing to understand. But also, and if I show you, and the problem is that the maps are not coming out. But okay, here's actually this map has come out. So what it does show is where poor communities are located, where job opportunities are. And what you do find is that those colors are the darker colors are your job opportunities, right? The gray colors are basically concentrations of the population. Now, places like Soweto and so on have got the tourist areas and so on have got a large population, but you also find outside of the urban core, large numbers of people. So people who live in Tshwane will tell you about, those who live in Tshwane will tell you about Winterveld and, Hammanskraal and Soshanguve and Mabopane and so on. Those are places which are actually quite far from urban centers. So very far from major economic opportunities. And in the south you have places like Orange Farm, and you have there are a number of townships around Vereeniging, Van der Bijl Park, but the amount of job opportunities in that area is not sufficient to for people in this part of the world. So a lot of them have to commute up to Joburg and further north. You also have in the West Rand especially, what you have is serious problem of the decline of the mining industry. So gold mining especially, as I said, we were like number one in the world. Now all the mines are closing, or they're not producing to the extent that they used to, because the gold is deeper and deeper, and as you go deeper and deeper it gets more dangerous, and in fact it becomes unviable and uneconomical to actually get to the gold. So they are going as deep as they can. This is South African gold mines are amongst the deepest in the world. But they're basically running out of gold here. So all of these towns, like Western area, Randfontein, Carletonville, and so on, are basically in serious economic decline. Whereas, the three metros, now, I don't know if people understand this, the concept of in local government in South Africa. You have local municipalities, like Western area, Randfontein, and so on. And then you have districts, so the whole of the West Rand is a district, and there's a couple of locals in. So there are two districts, the West Rand and Sedibeng, and they've got a couple of locals in between. And then you've got three metros, Joburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni. And that's where all the action is in terms of population, in terms of economic activity, in terms of development, in terms of infrastructure, and almost everything. So that's where a lot of the stuff is actually happening. But we do have a fundamental disconnect in this country. That disconnect is between where all the major opportunities are and where people are out in the periphery. So how do we make sure that you create a more equitable situation? If you're sitting in Carletonville, or the Merafong local municipality, you have to travel about 50 to 60 kilometers to really get to any significant level of job opportunities. So that's a kind of difficulty that we have, and one of the things that we're doing is to say, okay, how do we begin to create opportunities there as opposed to getting everyone to commute? Commuting is a very important part in this idea of, and I said at the beginning, of creating a city region. So what you have is not just like Joburg is a city. It's big by any standards. It's heading towards 5 million. It's like 4.5 million people at the moment. By any international standards, it's considered to be a big city, right? And so is Tshwane and Ekurhuleni. They're both in excess of 3 million people. And there are many European cities, for example, that have much, even maybe half of that. And even capital cities in Europe and so on, have that kind of thing. And maybe some places, other smaller places around the world. But what we are arguing is that economic and spatial core, or the space economy core of Gauteng, is what we are talking about, the beginnings of a Gauteng city region. So it's a wider region, with not just one city. And there are many examples of that around the world. So, the example like Sao Paulo, for example, you have the greater Sao Paulo area has got like 18 million people, but the core city has got 11 million people. And so it goes, you know, in many other places where you have this kind of spread out, you know, a dispersal of residential and economic activity. But that causes problems also. It causes problems because it means that you basically have to provide more public transport and infrastructure and housing in a wider area. It's more expensive because your infrastructure means it's expanding further and further outwards. So when we think about how we plan for the future, we need to think about ways in which we're actually beginning to contain development in a way in which and densify. So I mean, in a way so that you make your housing and infrastructure a lot more efficient, and that's the general principle which we need to be looking at. So, oops, this is a very busy slide. Maybe just to tell you a bit about some of these things. Like in terms of public transport, there are a couple of things which are important, which you may find interesting. So there's a very strong commitment. So what we're saying is that we also have to understand that Gauteng is already spread out. So let me give you an example. If we take, let's say if we take London. London is within the M25, which is the outer ring road. They have a road which goes around. The M25. Within that, that's about 1,600 square kilometers. It's about the size of the city of Joburg. Joburg packs in between 4.5 and 5 million people. London, you know, does about 8 to 9 million people. And London is not a particularly dense city by global standards. And that's a very important point. It's not a particularly dense city by global standards. But it means it makes things more efficient. If you, like they call outer London, for us it's not really far. And I mean, really dense cities are like your Tokyos and your Sao Paulos and your Mexico cities. Those places are really dense because if you're in Sao Paulo, which is the largest city in Brazil, it's not Rio, by the way. If you go and you stand in a high-rise building and look 24 to a kind of a 24. What do you call this thing? 360. There you go. A 360-degree kind of turn. You'll just see high-rises all over, like as far as I can see into the horizon, and basically people are living there. So there's a kind of concentration of people, and what you're seeing is basically 11 million people that I spoke about in the core of Sao Paulo. So we're not going to go there in that kind of way. It's not viable for a variety of reasons which I won't go into. But what we do have to do is to begin to say we don't spread out more and more and more and more, so that we just become. People like this idea of like saying, we're creating a new city like somewhere out there. It just means that you're creating a city in the middle of nowhere, and you're not going to get economic activity. So a lot of the major developments, I mean, if you read the newspapers, you'll know that investors are kind of investing quite a lot in, for example, in the new waterfall development. So, new Mall of Africa, largest mall in blah blah blah, whatever. And some of these developments, also the Modderfontein development. The one thing is that like people don't have a perspective of these things. But I grew up in Joburg, and if we had to travel in the old days, in the 70s when I grew up, if you travel to Pretoria, it was the mission. You jump in your car, you take water, take some food, and you drive on like really rickety roads. The M1 didn't exist, and so Benscombe Highway didn't exist, and basically it was like a journey to somewhere else. Of course, when the highways and all of that started coming in no time, what you had was like acceleration of development. I mean, I remember in 1990, the year I got married, 1990. I was traveling to Lodi in Pretoria, and on the side road, and I remember it for a particular reason, because we got to four-ways. Now, in those days, everyone knows where four-ways is today. It's where casinos are and many kind of all sorts of glitzy things. In those days, four-ways was a four-way stop. And if you looked around, there was nothing, just farmland. That's just basically a generation ago. That entire part of the world has basically developed. Now, it's a good thing, but it can also be problematic, because there are many people who live in that part of the world will tell you that sometimes to travel 2 kilometers, get onto the main road, it takes you in the morning, takes you 40 minutes, because we also had such an acceleration. There was such bad planning that happened that we weren't able to ensure that you could have a much more sort of efficient way of commuting and so on. So I don't know what the point of that was, but have I got a hand there? Okay, let me take the hand.
On the water for development and model containment, I just want to know, in terms of the people who are actually going to benefit, because if we look at the housing units which are going to be available at Waterfall and then model contain, who are, because I believe it's a project which was passed by you guys, you approved it. So who are you prioritizing to actually benefit from such developments? Because an ordinary person, I don't think they're going to be able to afford a house in Waterfall or a house in the modern Fontaine City. So it's, to me, when I look at it, it's more like you are just expanding more on the apartheid special development, because if you get into these places that you mentioned yourself, it's almost impossible when you're using public transport. So it's mostly catered for those people who already are well off compared to those ones who are disadvantaged.
No, that's an excellent point, and I think well, as far as Waterfall goes, I think it's too late, and you're right about it. It's actually been a problem, because what they didn't, by the way, let me just clarify that, and I'm not disclaiming responsibility, but the planning authority for this part is the city of Johannesburg. So provinces only do spatial frameworks. We don't do kind of detailed land use. So the city of Joburg is the planning authority, and they had approved the development in Waterfall. And Waterfall, it's true, I think it's ended up being an elite estate, or will end up that. So kind of mink and manure estates, and people would like horses and all this kind of thing. But what they're trying to do on Modderfontein, part of the reason for the delay is that the city basically dug its heels in and said to the developer that we're not going to allow another waterfall here. So they're basically saying that no, it's fine. Look, it also has to be viable for the developer in terms of the investment they're putting in and so on. But they're saying that, can we look at things like inclusionary housing? I don't even know this concept of inclusionary housing. Basically say that what you do is you have a mix of housing types, including low income and affordable housing in that context. So you don't create ghettos, but you don't have, you try and basically ensure that it's well distributed in that particular semi-urban system, so that you're not creating a little enclave of poverty, but kind of mixed across. So that's what they're arguing with the developers about at the moment, and that's why they've had delays. So I think we are learning from what's happening. So and it's true. I think that some of these, like you take, Steyn City is even worse. It's even worse because it's just completely crazy at that level. So, but you see, I think the point you're raising is exactly the importance of spatial planning and development. And I won't even go to the rest because I'm running out of time now. But I think this is the conversation exactly that we should have about how we plan our towns and cities in a way in which we ensure spatial equity and spatial justice. All of those nice words that we had coming from the NDP right at the beginning, we must make sure that it happens in reality, so that we don't reproduce the apartheid. As it is, we've got a really problematic spatial structure. So, in terms of the apartheid structure, so for example, a place like Soweto, which is now actually, for a low income, what was set out as a low income settlement historically had low densities, because they basically found a plot, built a house, and put a fence around and said right, and they moved on, and so they went. In other cities around the world, they don't do that. They basically go medium to high density. Basically, put you into apartment blocks. Sometimes, in fact, in housing estates which are very problematic. So, in parts of Europe and North America, you had these really high-rise buildings, which basically became ghettos later on. So that's also not the solution, if you see what I'm saying. But the problem was in those days, right? I mean, interestingly, it's all a matter of perspective. In those days, Soweto was far out. When people were moved to Soweto, I mean, people were living in the inner city of Johannesburg, in Newtown, in Safari Town, and places like that, which are very close to close to job opportunities in the old Joburg CBD, right? And when they created Soweto, basically you moved 20 kilometers away. I mean, today it doesn't seem far, but in those days it was people were pushed out onto the periphery. But now what we're doing is that we're having new settlements out on the periphery, but basically as enclaves for the rich. So that's exactly the problem. So how do we begin to address that issue through kind of effective planning? I'll give you just a different example. This organization called PARI, Public Affairs Research Institute, they kind of like part of it, not totally, but they're doing really interesting research. So one piece of research they did, for example, was they looked at, if you know Hendrik Pagita, the road which takes you out to sort of Magaliesburg area. So the sort of the northern parts of Roodepoort, if you like. And that whole part basically just developed like in 10 years. But there was no planning. That's mainly city of Joburg. And the planning was very, very bad. Okay. But the interesting that happened, but there were two things that happened there. The one was that you had all these kind of like townhouse developments, right? But virtually no facilities, so no schools, no social facilities, very bad kind of roads and connecting into your arterial roads and so on. So very bad planning at that level. But interestingly enough, what you found there was based some level of deracialization that you don't see in other places. So in other words, kind of mixed racial groups, but of course in class terms. So I mean, of course we're very poor. I mean, you have to look for an RPP house, but this is people who can, who are just like in the threshold where they can start getting bonds, even very modest ones. And what Perry was saying is that it's actually very interesting. So you got like a townhouse complex, and you got like, it's quite mixed colored, Indians, whites, Africans, everyone kind of together, not necessarily living happily next to each other, but coexisting, if you see what I'm saying. So the one problem that we have in this country is and some of the issues that we're facing today in relation to racism and so on is because of the reinforcement of the existing spatial patterns. So if you are kind of the area where I live, it's now, when I moved in there 12, 13 years ago, it was mainly white, historically white, a few Ks from here. And then like a lot of Muslims started moving in, so it changed the character. Okay, so now it's kind of like escape from lens, and like I'm back in there again, if you know what I'm saying, at another level. So you can't escape. So I have to rather go to maybe somewhere else, if you see what I'm saying. But I want to be in a place where there's diversity, if you see what I'm saying. I want diversity. Right? So, but look, even around the world, I mean, you also have this thing where people do tend to kind of congregate by ethnicity and so on, even if there isn't formal apartheid, right? And even if you don't have such sort of like serious economic disparities that you have in this country, but the problem is that because of the coincidence between race and class in this country, you end up in apartheid ghettos effectively. But anyway, let me take some points here. I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop here and we just have a general conversation. I'm like very far from the end, but I think we'll just, yeah, please.
I want to take a lot of time, but just want to ask this question. what makes a metro? Now the reason why I'm asking this thing is a very odd one, very odd reason is because very recently I'm actually from Ekurhuleni.
You're from where, sorry?
I'm from Israel.
Ekurhuleni, oh. Sorry.
So
I need to
somebody asked me why there is no soccer team on that side. Then I thought it's a joke, something serious. But then I begin to see.
Bloemfontein Celtic is up for sale now, you know that.
So I began to take it. At the time when they asked me the question, it was like I just asked me. But now when I said and I look, hey, you know what? Ekurhuleni is quite different from the metros. I mean, JC and PTA. It's different. So now it's like, why that is a metro and it's so different from this metro? What makes a metro?
I think Ekurhuleni is a metro, but it's a metro of a different sort. You see, let me just say this, and if you speak to the mayor, for example, and many other people who work there, the city manager and others, what they'll tell you is that unlike Joburg, which had more of a kind of coherence, with the old Joburg and then the expansions to the north and Soweto and so on, people always had an identity of it being, well, where do you live? I live in Josie. So if you got a visitor, if you go to the Eastern Cape from Soweto, that's where you from Josie. You know what I'm saying? But actually, people from Soweto say I'm from Soweto. It's like people from New York. They say, but I'm like, if you ask somebody from New York, like, where are you from? They won't say I'm from the US. I'm from New York because it's a brand that everyone recognizes. Right? So Soweto and Josie are brands, right? Ekurhuleni nobody's heard of. You see, that's part of the problem. No, I'm serious. But actually, the more serious point is this: that they inherited a series of old mining towns. So Benoni, Boksburg, Springs, Captain Bar, those are all separate towns under apartheid. And now they're trying to knit them together into one place. And it's not quite working. Because even those places were mining towns, they had particular purpose, they served the area, they had like a little, kind of main street, with like Oki bazaars in those days and whatever. Who has heard of Oki bazaars? Who's heard of Oki bazaars? I mean, like in the old days.
So it's a metro in progress. It's not a metro.
No, but we see at another level, it does meet the criteria of the metro, because the criteria of the metro is you have a kind of population. In the law, there's in the Municipal Structures Act, I think, defined what a metro is. So in terms of population, economy, and so on, it does, but it doesn't have the kind of features that Joburg and Tshwane have. But Tshwane is also another place. Let me tell you, some of the parts of Tshwane are like in. Hammanskraal was in Bokito Tshwane, and it was, it was like in another place. So now they've redrawn the boundaries to include. They also include Bronkhorstspruit. Bronkhorstspruit is another place which is like far away. So it's also a bit silly in some senses. In that, as far as I'm concerned, the Tshwane metro, not the core, not your like sort of Mamelodi, Atteridgeville, Centurion, Pretoria. That is even Soshanguve and Mabopane, the core parts of Tshwane. But there's other places. They're like. They're in another place. So it's a bit dysfunctional at one level. But the only reason why they're together is because of cross-subsidization. So you make those places, you make Hammanskraal more viable. You see. Okay, let me get, now I have many things. Right, okay. 1, 2. No, but you had your chance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, in that order. 5. What? No. Oh, I thought you were thinking. Okay, let's start.
I was born and bred in Soweto, and I've even throughout my study have driven to Johannesburg. And one thing I've picked up, and perhaps you can engage me in this. Johannesburg, I think, has very interesting innovations in terms of how it plans to make the city or the metro more urban. But also one thing I've picked up is it's also it's counter its productivity. And I will mention perhaps the Ria Vaya bus transit system. I think I liked that idea because of, for once, I think the mayor had acknowledged that public transportation in Gauteng maybe was not so conducive to the general public which was using it. It was also very violent. There's a lot of taxi wars and types of, so Rea Vaya was introduced. But now if you look at the general population in Soweto using Rea Vaya, you find that again because of the cost, and when Rea Vaya started off, Rea Vaya was quite cheap. You find out that the cost of Rea Vaya is again very exclusive of a few people. So the general population of Soweto cannot use Rea Vaya. And the few who can afford it are still subjected to quite very hostile conditions because of instead of maybe the city introducing more Rea Vayas, in the morning when you pass by with a taxi, you find that there's people who stand maybe from Soweto in Dube until Rosebank, and they'll probably be subjected to that again when they go back. And I mean I think I have more examples. You also consider the idea of Bara, how I think just immediately after '94 there were a lot of improvements that were being initiated within the whole health system. And Bara, I thought, by virtue of being one of the greatest hospitals in Africa, would also be central, within that development. But the conditions.
Sorry, what development are you talking about?
Sarah.
No, I know, but what about it?
The metro developments, like the general metro development, I'm not particularly speaking about spatial.
No, but I'm trying to understand how you're linking Para to that.
How I'm linking Bara
the hospital
to being developed. So you would have imagined that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Maybe, yes.
Okay.
And so that perhaps is it. And I would understand if maybe you guys have forgotten, maybe or the people who plan, the council and the mayor around, Johannesburg maybe get overwhelmed to a certain extent for the obvious reasons. Maybe you've raised the idea that. You cannot control maybe the migration. There's a lot of people who come into the city, so even maybe planning for the city becomes a bit of a problem. But maybe are there strategies in place that you guys have some sort of outlined, or that maybe you might have heard of, even if they're not within your department, to some sort of fix these small situations that could eventually end up being quite, hostile for the greater Johannesburg public, because I also want to believe that a whole lot of the people who say so to make a big part of the Johannesburg.
Okay, maybe I should just respond as we go, because otherwise we may forget all the nuance and point. I think that, and by the way, this is a conversation, so please, if you've got something to say about what somebody's raised, please stick your hands up. But I think you raised a couple of points. The one issue around Rea Vaya was that it was actually meant as a kind of a different option to the mainstay of public transport in this country, which is the minibus taxi industry. We basically take 80% of all commuters in the country. So, and at one level, the minibus taxi industry is amazing in the sense that they spread. They're 2 streets away from where you stay, for example. I'm just kidding, but probably, if you know what I'm saying, you can just walk and then you can get a taxi. But you can't do the same with other modes of public transport, including rail and Rea Vaya. Even though rail in Soweto is not that bad compared to other places, it's not that bad, but it's still not extensive enough. I'm talking about old rail, and then obviously, Rea Vaya. I think Rea Vaya, but it's also about saying how do we inject a sense of kind of usability for public transport and so on, and that was what the idea behind Rea Vaya was. Okay. And also there are different modes play different roles. So the role heavy rail plays a particular role. Taxis, so they can be complementary. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive. And I think that's an important point to make. The one problem that we did not foresee, and this is a planning issue, and I worked for the city at the time, so I take responsibility, that we did not foresee is that the spatial structure of South African cities basically do not lend themselves to the kinds of densities that you need to sustain Rea Vaya. And by that I mean that you only have people traveling from in the morning from Soweto into town and the evening back. There isn't this constant thing. In other Rea Vaya systems, people are on and off all the time and using it on a regular basis. Here you travel from one point to the next. You see, and that's a big problem. So even taxis, they can easily redeploy and go somewhere else and do shorter routes or whatever. But you've got a Rea Vaya type system, you have to run the route, if you see what I'm saying. So part of what the city of Joburg is doing, they have an interesting thing called Corridors of Freedom. And basically what they're doing is that they're saying that the one route, the one route which takes you to Soweto via, Empire Road, Perth and all of that, they want to densify that significantly. So in other words, create housing opportunities across, along that corridor all the way to Soweto. And also on the Louis Botha corridor, for example, in addition. So that will make, it's not just about making Rea Vaya more viable, but also begins to create more opportunities for people to live closer to economic opportunities. So that's a one issue, right? But there are many other issues with Rea Vaya which I'm not going to go into, or BRT systems in general, the problems we have in this. I mean, in fact, we've got 3 different BRT systems in Joburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni, and in fact, they're not even interoperable. I don't know if you know that. In other words, you can't just connect the lines because the buses for Joburg are this high and the buses for Tshwane are that high. Now, seriously, so the platforms are different platforms. And so those are all mistakes that we made. And in fact, I was part of it, and now we say, oh my God. And you do things small in incremental basis, right? Because you start with like 5 kilometers or something. You don't start with 100 kilometers, you know what I'm saying? So that's, and then Tshwane said, but why this Joburg guys are they made? Why are they putting the platform so high? It's much more expensive. It's cheaper to build low platforms and lower buses. And actually they're right. So anyway, so we have to look at how we deal with interoperability problems. Issue around Bara very quickly. Bara is a very interesting kind of hospital. We know all the statistics, largest in the Southern Hemisphere and blah, 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 blah. But it's a very fragmented place. The problem is that to rebuild it will cost us billions and billions. It's a provincial government facility. In some cases, it has world-class facilities. I mean, people don't know that neurology, for example, the surgical department is like one of the best in the country. And it's an academic teaching hospital. And people who really want to learn about stuff, including how to treat gunshot wounds, come from other countries to it's a joke, but it's also true, if you know what I'm saying. Or scaling, for example. I mean, that's a big issue. Like Friday night, Saturday night, you must know, they're going to learn. It's a terrible thing, but it's true. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, Bara is a phenomenal place at one level. At another level, it's completely a problem because it's so spread out. It's not an integrated facility. Some are very but so the one idea is to also to de-densify. So the new Jabulani Hospital in Soweto is an idea to get fewer people going to Bara. So it's a big, nice, new modern facility, like a nice hospital. So you have few people going there. So look, I mean, some of these things you can't just, you have to rebuild. I don't know what the cost would be. It would probably be maybe 20-30 billion or something. I don't know. And basically we can't afford it. Okay, we better run quickly. Okay, I'm skipping for now. Can I go to you quickly?
Yeah, the issue on the housing development complexes. Is there any attention focused in regulating how they keep popping up? And it just seems like there hasn't been much thought going into the amount of traffic we're going to bring into, as opposed to how many of them there are. And also, is there any way to regulate the housing association groups, like at their national level? So is there any sort of laws that regulate what they can't do? Because
are you talking about the body corporates?
Because I find that they're kind of new form of oppression in my perspective. It's just they come up with the most passive aggressive, just stifling rubbish that I feel are infringing on a person's right to be. So both on a time planning perspective, is there any special attention to them, and also on the regulatory sort of way? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to answer it quickly, right? So I think the first part of your thing is that I think now, so in this case, the city of Joburg is beginning to look at that issue seriously. Again, we've learned. I think, in the post-apartheid period, we also had, just as a precursor to what I'm saying, is that we had a period of rapid economic development and spatial growth, like very dramatic, which is now slowed down very substantially. Okay, but like as I said, 4 years didn't exist. Boom, next thing you just got development as far as I can see, right? And that was a consequence of very poor planning. But now things have slowed down. The city itself has realized that actually it can't just go on like crazy. So now there's much more careful development. But also that in terms of densification, it's something that we, that planners basically say it's better than just, having just one house on a 1,000 meter or 600 square meter plot. You see what I'm saying? Because it's a better option, but also becomes like cheaper for people. The downside is the one that you're talking about, and it's a difficulty because in a way you're buying into a private enclave development, so you have to self-regulate, and that's the problem. So how you can't really. Can the state regulate something that people themselves have chosen to do? So it's always a difficult thing, and you're always going to have the difficult kind of racist, this one and that one, which is the kind of thing that I'm sure you're facing. But unfortunately, I don't think there is some legislation, I think, on in terms of that governs, but it's not, but it doesn't, it's still not going to take body corporates away, and I think that concept. Unfortunately, unless we rethink this thing completely, there isn't any other way. So, I don't know if I got an answer for you on that one, but let me just rapidly go there. No, who was number 3?
It was me.
Yeah, let me get the real number 3. Okay.
But you really touched on the river thing, and I wanted to ask, because for me in the morning traffic is terrible. So I wanted to know if you guys know that places like Soweto will be struggling to get you. Why are things like the Gauteng only limited to places like Joburg? Why are they not going further in, like Joburg and other places? I know a lot of people want that, but what are you doing in terms of that? Because
well, I have many maps, so I don't know how this guy did my maps, but anyway. But I can show. Okay, let me not show you the map. But basically, on Gauteng, but he's going to complain it's too expensive. But anyway, that's it.
I also complain
Okay,
about that.
but anyway, okay. Imagine the map. Gauteng runs from Park Station all the way to Hatfield, right? And then one little thing out there to Ortambo, right? There's currently a pre-feasibility study. It will take another 10 years, but it's not a quick fix because it's going to cost. Gauteng costs about 30 billion there. Right? Now, in current day costs to do the same thing will probably cost like 50 or 60 billion. Right? But anyway, there's another line which can run from Mamelodi across all the way east to west down to Soweto.
Oh, okay.
So that's the plan. And then, in fact, that one from Park Station will be taken down to Westgate Station, if you know Joburg.
Yeah.
There's a Westgate Station over there, which is also on the BRT route, as you know. Mm-hmm. So it creates a more of an interchange there as well. But the east to west, there's a pre-feasibility at the moment. If we have the money, we will build it. I promise you. And remember, the issue here is that like if we take Mamelodi over here in the north east, west, what is it?
West.
East. Mamelodi is over here, and you go all the way. You're going to be and all the way to Soweto. You're going to cut across quite an important population component of Gauteng in a very significant way. So, oops, yeah, okay. Okay, now you see how many questions I got here. Okay, all right. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, now she, yeah, you.
I just wanted to ask you, so what exactly is your involvement in youth empowerment in Johannesburg, especially youth unemployment, and women economic empowerment?
Okay, I'll answer the first one second, your second question first.
Yes.
This morning I tweeted and put on Facebook the fact that today's International Women's Day. Okay. And so basically, personally, I said it's a good thing. But we all know it's International Women's Day. I hope we do. Okay. On the first of the issue around youth. No, seriously, the issue around youth development. I mean, from a provincial government point of view, there's a very strong commitment to that. Right? There's a program called TEPO 500,000. It's modeled on TEPO 50,000 in Gauteng, in Tshwane. And we've now kind of expanded it for TEPO 500,000, basically saying that we're also going to work with existing initiatives. So it's not only kind of doing a whole lot of new stuff. So, for example, there'll be training opportunities. There'll be kind of matching of employees and employees. There will be some direct work experiences where possible, and so on and so on.
Okay,
so all of that is under the. So it's a very comprehensive program. You can look at the Premier's speech, State of the Province Address 2016, SOPA 2016. Just go and Google it, you'll find it, and we'll look for TEPO, and that's where you can see. Okay, let me get you, since you are behind you. Okay, behind you.
I just want to know, because when you look at, you guys say you're focusing on expansion, right? And my question is, why didn't you like focus on, if you talk about Northern principles, right? Because that's a principle that maybe you guys as government should have focused on and develop that area instead of letting private individuals come to that space and then develop it, and then they make it another elite place within the city. And another thing is that, why is it that we are getting development, for instance, in Jabulani, as you mentioned, and there's going to be more investment going onwards. Now we're going to be improving the theater and so on. So my question is, what about Alex? Do you have any plans for Alexander except for the corridors of freedom that you have there nearby? And another thing, when you talk about...
You're asking too many questions. No, I can answer all your questions, but we don't have time. So let me do one. No more. To be fair, because you were there before. On the issue around Maboneng, okay, who supports this idea that government should have developed Maboneng? Let's see.
What's Maboneng?
Okay, if you know what this means, okay, it's this new development, kind of like, all the hipsters hang out and the plain fact of the matter is that if government did it, it wouldn't have happened. I'm telling you, as somebody who's worked in government for a long time.
Yeah.
Because what the guy that developer had this idea of vision of taking a derelict area and transforming it. I mean, he kind of worked in a single-handed way. Ever since I worked in government, and I started here after 1994. If you take the idea was the same one in Newtown. I work in my office is in Newtown. It's a shit place because government developed it and didn't do what they're supposed to do. To be crude about it. On the other end of town, this developer came in, he bought out the buildings, he made it a desirable area. So I'm just saying, and all the other lousy buildings in Hillbrow, Bird Park, and so on, government has got that opportunity. I mean, it's our fault as government, and I take responsibility, right? But we must also give the private sector opportunities. And so we want a diverse country. And look, it's true, the poor are not going to afford Maboneng existence at the moment. It's just not possible. Okay, that's what, I can go on, but the other, Alex, I don't know what the solution is. Nobody knows the solution. The reason is, if you know Alex, the old part of Alex is that first, the problem is ownership of the land. And nobody knows who owns what. And there are disputes. So you and your sister and your cousin and your uncle are all fighting for the same little piece of land that have been there for like generations. And nobody knows who really owns it because there aren't any proper kind of title deeds and so on. The deeds office is in a mess and so on and so on. So, and that's the one thing. And of course, there's encroachment all along. So you don't even know whether or not this is a plot, and then you've encroached into your neighbor on this side and so on. And we've done everything. I mean, I know about the Alex Renewal Project from the day one that it started. And we did everything outside surrounding Alex, but not that issue, because it's an intractable problem, as we call it. I mean, nobody has found a solution, a clever solution to deal with this thing because of the disputes in land ownership. And that's the fundamental issue. And I'm not taking more questions from you.
Yes,
let me go to you.
questions.
Okay, we're done. All right. Okay. Are you taking any more questions?
No, this is the last one.
Okay.
Okay, it's on the appeal team.
Yeah.
What's sparking my interest on the PRT? I don't know the agenda of the PRT or the motive behind the PRT, but if I may put it that way. When it was introduced, I remember the taxi industry, they needed to take their taxis to be counted, if it's lack of a better way. You know, when you're traveling with the PRT, it doesn't take a solution, because you find that when we go inside that thing, it's like in apartheid era, when the metro rail, everyone used to even climb on top of the train. You understand?
It's not really nice.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. It's like it doesn't do a solution. Rather, it doesn't bring a solution to the transport system. So I want to know, what is it that you intend to do to resolve that issue? Because BRT on its own, besides it's being crowded, another challenge is that these drivers also, I've seen a lady, like a senior citizen, flying from a seat in a bend. That's how they drive, and you find it's even overloaded. And I've seen 2 passengers collapsing because of the heat. They couldn't take a heat. So people, they usually send the emails to the administration, but they'll just say, okay, we'll sort it out. So to what extent can you take this as a citizen, a concerned citizen or concerned resident?
Okay, there are a couple points to make. The one issue is just maybe to clarify this point about the taxi recapitalization program.
Yes.
It was never meant to say that we're going to do away with minibus taxis. Because we can't, because 80% of all commuters use minibus. It's the mainstay of public transport in this country, whether we like it or not. Okay. What they were saying is that in the recap program, that's why it's called a recapitalization. It means that you pound the one, but you basically give them new, more safer ones and blah blah blah. Okay, and that was also very controversial, as you know. So
because the government.
But what BRT? Let me finish. What BRT is trying to do is that you have a. Okay, I mean, who's been to London? Okay. All right. Okay. A few have been, right? So you go to London. They have all types of public transport coexisting side by side. So you in one day you can use the subway, the underground as it's called there, you can use the bus, you can use night buses late at night, you can use black taxi cabs, you can use Uber now, you can maybe like on the side, you can use whatever, and you can use British Rail, which is the normal, and they have commuter rail like Metro Rail, some kind of thing. So you can use more than one mode because different modes play different things. So the one thing I'm just telling you is that you don't have one mode. You have many modes of transport or public transport, and but they should be organized. They should be interconnected. All of that, which we haven't achieved, and there's a big problem. But the issue around BRT was basically to find a solution which would be relatively cost effective. Okay. In comparison to basically a subway system or even to a light rail system, which those two systems are much more expensive than BRT. BRT is not cheap either, let me just tell you. It's quite expensive to rebuild those roads and so on. But it's cheaper than those other options. So you basically want to increase the amount of public transport options that people have available. That's the essential point. The issue that you're raising about how people, what happens in them and drivers' conduct and so on happens with Metrobus. You saw it just up the road here the other day, the two buses collided, not the other day, a few weeks ago. I mean, people drive lousy and you have the same problem on Patco buses, you have the same problem. I mean, taxi drivers are probably the worst, aren't they? but I mean, people are scared of taxi drivers, aren't they?
Everyone is falling in a taxi.
Yeah, no space to fall. I mean, one thing is that we have the point I'm making is that we have a big culture in this country in relation to people who are supposed to be public servants who don't give a damn. And I think that kind of culture must end. But that's not only, you can't legislate everything. We need you know this whole concept, the different concept of social cohesion. You know, how we relate to each other, especially like Ubuntu, how we relate to one another, how do we respect each other, how do we respect, you know, if you're a public servant, how do you respect your, you know, your citizens. We have to learn it as a society.
Yes, yes.
So, and how do we do it? We must all do it. And maybe tell the taxi driver, hey, when you know, we'll. Okay, guys.
Okay, guys. Round of applause one more time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. I think.